research, looking at people like Winston Wu, looking at people like Stephen Hoka, Return of Kings, YouTube users like LFA, Solotv84, Independent Man, Men101. Basically, they have problems with the dating scene in America and the Western world, okay? The fact is that the females are basically not very approachable, they're not very friendly, that simply the fact that one of the things is that the relationships they're getting, they're not reliable. In other words, they bring up this 80-20 rule or 90-10 rule. When they get in a relationship, the women are very narcissistic, they're very demanding. The fact that when they lead to a marriage, they're more likely to get into divorce. Women takes everything. And a lot of these American women suck. This is all because of feminism. Women are increasingly hitting the wall. And this is how we get all these cat ladies, single moms, and everything. Okay, we have abortion. We've got, just a lot of these different things, a lot of these different problems across our society. Now, I do believe, though, that, first of all, there are problems with Western women, okay? Because I've experienced them. And there are times where I have not been comfortable, I have been struggling. Now, where I disagree with a lot of these YouTube users is that on the details on how they characterize American and Western women. Now, another thing is that they also don't talk about some interesting truths that may be relevant on the other side. So basically, their claims is very, very simple. American women are very narcissistic, they're very unapproachable. And first of all, I kind of have to disagree. When I approach a lot of women, when I drive around, when I walk around the neighborhood, when I go to downtown, when I go to lounges, when I go to just a lot of everyday places, I flirt with women. Most of the time, women are not very picky. They don't say, ew, get the hell away from me. Why are you talking to me? They actually smile, they giggle, they blush, and they say thank you. And it really makes their day. And many women, depending on the setting, they actually have a conversation with me. Now, there are problems with a lot of women. One of the problems that I've had is, yeah, they may find me attractive, they may talk to me, they may like my approach, but the problem that I've had with a lot of women, it's not easy to get a date from these women. In other words, you may hang out with them for a while, but then hang out another time has been very difficult. So many times they give me their number, or I don't even ask directly, but they give it to me anyway. But a lot of times it doesn't lead to another hangout. And one of the problems with that is that I just think it's pretty harsh. The women just don't give men another try. Maybe because they're picky about how you approach them, or maybe they're just picky about some of the details that you said in their conversation. So they may like a lot about you, but they're not willing to give you another chance. So they can be very judgmental. So when I'm getting a lot of numbers and I'm texting them, many times it does not lead to another hookup. Just like me. Just recently, I was, of course, nevertheless, went to the same lounge out in Fremont Street, which was called Gold Spike, Wednesday night and Thursday night. And both times, I've kissed a girl, I've made out, I've held hands, we really clicked in. But so far, since then, we haven't had a hangout time. I've texted them, I haven't gotten a response. And so they seem to like me a lot. But again, it's like they're not leading to anything significant. One of the also problems I've talked about in many, many cases is the fact that the problem with a lot of women is that it has to be the right setting. In other words, it's like you can be a good-looking guy, best talking skills, and a woman is pumping gas at midnight, and basically one of the things that results from that is that because it's not the right setting, she doesn't feel comfortable. So it always has to be the right setting. It has to be like in a social gathering event. It has to be in a third party where a matchmaker or a dating site introduces you to somebody, a friend introduces you to somebody. So this is one of the problems. So I think women are very picky about the setting. In other words, if you're like walking down the street and you see somebody beautiful, it's still very, very challenging. You know, it has to be the right appropriate setting. A noisy nightclub, not as good as like, you know, a lounge where there are not that many people in it. And so this is one of the things. Yes, and there are problems where when women get into a relationship and get married, you know, they use you, they can divorce you, they can take half of your wealth and income and a lot of different things, child support, a lot of different things. So yeah, you can argue that the system is rigged against men. But nevertheless, of course, I've seen a lot of divorces where the opposite's been true, where the woman doesn't give a lot of opportunity to spend time with the children. So it's not just always the one way. There are other times where things have been rigged against women. But I totally agree. These family court systems, these divorce laws, a lot of different things, the false rape accusations, this climate of Me Too and everything is really getting out of hand. And I totally agree. But nevertheless, it's not so bad that if you look at a woman, still a good chunk of the time, they will still like you, they will still giggle, they will still blush. And yes, I agree, there are problems with online dating. You know, if you go to Tinder, a guy who's a 10 will probably get less hits and less good reactions than a woman who's a 1. And yes, you can argue the system with online dating is heavily rigged. Now, of course, the way to solve that problem is you can limit the number of hits and messages to probably 1 or 2 a day. That's one of the things that you can understand. But I agree. You know, one of the problems I've noticed is that the whole scene of meeting women is quite challenging. One of the things I've noticed is that nowadays, especially for women under 30, the men who do very well with, of course, women are the ones who seem to be very popular, who have good social circles, who fit in the crowd, who know how to talk to women very, very well. And I think the problem is that they place too much emphasis on that. You know, they don't put a lot of emphasis, in my opinion, based on, is this guy really having a good personality? Does he have good looks? Does he make good enough income to support a family? It seems like those guys who have the good social vibe, who have a lot of women introduced to them, are the men who are doing very, very well. So in other words, let's just say if you take a guy like Brad Pitt or whoever, and he didn't have the popularity, he would probably be far less attractive. This is one of the reasons why celebrities, athletes, musicians do very well in our modern dating society than just a typical very good-looking man down the street, okay? Now, another problem I've noticed with the modern dating scene is that it's very difficult to find young women in a lot of places you go. I mean, try going to a grocery store, try going to a drugstore, try going to the park, library, trails. It's not very easy to find young women. When you go across the neighborhood, finding young women between the ages of 19 to 30 seems like pretty non-existent. And I think the problem is that the modern woman has spent so much time going to school and doing schoolwork, going to work for their job, and spending so much time in bars and clubs that they really don't seem to get out in the real world. And, you know, rather than hanging out at other places, social gathering events more often, this would make a climate for a lot of men who probably don't like the bar scene, men like me who don't go to school, who don't have jobs where we can meet lots of people. That gives us a really unfair advantage. And it's very difficult for people like me that we may not have a really good social circle, especially for people like me who have interests and goals that are very different from the typical 26-year-old man. And maybe this is why things are still not easy for me. Now, another thing I also wanted to talk about is that they always bring up this 80-20 rule. You know, we often constantly hear that, okay, 80% of women are going for the top 20% of guys, but how does that make sense? Majority of men in their mid-20s have already had relationships, okay? And then again, you have to understand that, yes, there is inequality in terms of there is some men that do get a lot more women than others. But that's because of the reality that we're living. That's because of the social engineering. Now, yes, there is probably like a 5% have good pickup strategies. They know how to talk to women. They have a lot of social circle that they get a high portion of them. But from what I've seen, still literally 90-something% of women and 90-something% of men, they go through all these women and they constantly get rejected. And of course, you have to understand that one of the reasons you hear this is because that the bottom 40% of men, nowadays especially, unlike 50 years ago, they're really not attractive. You have to understand men have changed a lot too. The bottom 40% have turned into like these emasculated soy boys. They've turned into these men who just play hours of video games. They're not attractive. They've gained weight. Maybe this is why there's inequality, as a matter of fact. And then, of course, the top 5% of guys, if you look at, there's massive income inequality. They're getting a lot of the income. They're getting a lot of popularity. The rise of bodybuilding, you know, this gangster player culture and the mass media has promoted. So maybe this is why there's some level of inequality, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people have talked about across the YouTube community. And this is, of course, another problem. Like I've just mentioned, there's a lot of men, they think it's cool and hip to be gangsters, pull their pants down. And this is causing a lot of the differences in males. This is largely social engineering. And these types of men have really not been around also about 50 years ago, as much as they are now. Now, of course, women have changed as well. Women have gone from this traditional princess type of women, and a lot of them have turned into these women who look and feel more masculine, and they focus so much on careers at school. And then there's these women that all they do is just be sluts and whores and sleep with so many other guys and constantly go to clubs. And so men and women have been divorced. Now, I just want to talk about the issue with Winston Wu and LFA and all these other YouTube channels, because they talk about how American women are unapproachable, but they never talk about how they actually approach Western women. Because I want to see how you approach Western women. Maybe the reason you're not doing well in America in the dating scene is because you're not approaching them well. I have to see. But I can tell you that approaching women isn't all that difficult. Just be in the right setting, start off with a joke, say something funny, ask a question, have a good conversation starter, and a good chunk of the women are willing to spend at least more than a minute with you, okay? Now, one of the reasons why dating, once again, is dysfunctional is because, once again, men have been destroyed. Like, if I was a 25-year-old woman and I look at the dating scene, and if I want to be this traditionalist housewife, well, there aren't that many good quality men out there. A lot of men in their mid-20s are still living with their parents, playing video games, emasculated. A lot of men are just drinking and being players at clubs and being gangsters. There isn't a lot of men out there who are very traditional and very professional in their 20s, who are willing to earn enough to support a family, who are willing to take responsibility, ready to have a family, fix things in the house, just like you guys criticize women who don't know how to cook and clean and take care of children. So this is part of the problem. Both sides have been really engineered. Now, of course, you guys talk about, well, Western women suck, so the solution is to go to foreign countries, particularly Asian countries. But how do you expect me to believe that? Because a lot of Asian women who are in this country are the most pickiest, unapproachable, unsocial women out of all the types of women that I've seen, black, white, and especially Hispanic. I get along the most with Hispanic women. And yes, it's understandable that, of course, maybe things are tougher in America because it's a more developed country. And I have seen Iranian women are quite different and have some better qualities than perhaps Western women do. But from what I've heard, a lot of men have gone to these other countries. And a lot of these women have used them for their green cards. They have used them for other aspects of their lives. They weren't able to get along with the dating scene there as well. You know, just take a look at it. There's a lot of clips about the myth of the foreign women. As a matter of fact, I believe the largest difference is not about differences of country, but differences of the types of places where you live. In other words, maybe if you go from a large city to a small town in Idaho, in Nebraska, or in Alaska, maybe you'll see a difference in the female scene, okay? Because I've dated actually a girl from, believe it or not, from the small towns of Idaho when I lived in Southern California, and she had a lot of great qualities that a lot of Southern California women didn't have. And as a matter of fact, I currently live in Las Vegas, and I've noticed that there's been quite of an overall difference with women in Las Vegas, Henderson, Clark County, versus women in Southern California, Los Angeles, Orange County, especially in San Diego. And, you know, really the bar and the lounge scene is much different from my experience here than it was in Orange County. By comparison, the scene in Laguna Beach and Newport is miserable by comparison. But again, another thing is you guys always seem to focus on is bars, clubs, dating sites. In my opinion, it's probably better that you stay away from these places. As a matter of fact, try matchmaking services. I don't know about places like It's Just Lunch. I don't know about that. But there's certainly a lot of other services you can try. You can try speed dating, or, you know, just network. Start just making everyday friends. Start just meeting people, go to their parties, network with, and try to see if you could be introduced to people. The people who have the largest social networks are the men, from what I've noticed, are more likely to get dates, relationships, and marriages. In other words, just sitting at home really isn't going to do you much, to be honest with you. Unless if you really know how to work the Tinder and Bumble accounts, then you'll probably succeed. But you should go to meetup events. But anyway, my point is that I agree to a large extent with Winston Wu, LFA, Solotv84, Return of Keys, that there is a problem with women in our society, with feminism and everything. And as a matter of fact, I really believe it's gone so out of hand that a lot of you guys should just produce a documentary film about it. As far as I know, there hasn't been any documentary films criticizing feminism in Western societies. And you guys have a good point. This is really social engineering. This has helped plunge the birth rate in Western countries, and this helped along pave the way for all these third world immigrants or whatever, invaders, to come in and change our society. This is well social engineering. And you have a good point, Mr. Winston Wu. American culture in many ways is fake, although I don't think living in America is as bad as you say it is. But still, nevertheless, there are problems. I think you guys should organize. I think there needs to be mass protests across the country, locally, that fight backs against feminism, the courts, you know, just all of this nonsense that's gone out of hand, where it seems like women have more power than males do. But then again, I believe the best way to fight back in our society is the introduction of female robots. And one of the things is that female robots is going to do, hopefully it's going to provide a competitive alternative, especially men who have gone MGTOW and have realized, well, women these days don't offer much, and I can still get sexual satisfaction with these female robots. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a female robot brothel here in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas is known to have prostitution, even though it's illegal, although it's legal in nearby counties. But if we can use robots, this will not only deliver alternative to women, so no longer having to deal with fear and anxiety of approaching them, starting a relationship, the anxiety of divorce and everything, but at the same time, it will deliver a lot of other solutions. Rapes will come down, STDs, and a lot of different things. And a lot of these feminists are very pissed off about sex robots. But I think we should all work together to open this kind of business so we have a real competitive alternative. Kind of like how Uber and Lyft was introduced to provide real competition for rental cars, taxis, buses, and in some cases even air travel. So anyway, the point is that yes, there is a problem, but I don't agree with your details. And I think the public should probably try different types of approaches. But once again, spread this video, get the word out there. This is a problem, and we really have to kind of come together for real solutions. Thank you guys so much. Spread this video. Take care.